Imagine you are an alien, okay? You are cruising the universe. You enter our galaxy, then approach our solar system. Then you see planet Earth at night. You observe America is glowing. Europe is glowing. A large portion of Asia is glowing. And then you see a huge landmass that is mostly dark. You scan it, you can tell there are 1.4 billion souls. Remember, you're an alien. You have no knowledge of Africa history, no politics, no development theory. You ask yourself the question, the obvious question: how is it so dark? This is Africa. And this darkness is not poetic, it is about power supply. So, how a continent rich in oil, gas, hydro, solar, and minerals remain energy weak? To answer, we have to leave emotion and enter systems. Just like in our former podcast on the failed state of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we are here to understand the issue behind it. This is At Africa for Us, and welcome back. So, today we discuss a crucial matter: why Africa is dark at night from space. Honestly, I was surprised to find out that from an energy and industry perspective, most of Africa, with exceptions from North Africa and South Africa, the rest of Africa has not completed the transition into a fossil fuel driven civilization at scale. Yes, you've heard it well. Fossil fuel driven civilization. What it means is that when a country uses very strong fuels like coal, oil, and gas to make lots of power, that power helps build big factories, big machines, and big cities. That's how many rich and powerful countries became strong. The Europeans did, America did, Asia did. They built their economy on dense energy: coal, oil, gas. So Vaclav Smil, in his book Energy and Civilization, a book I highly recommend, he quote, "The history of civilization is the history of energy transitions." His research concluded that first, civilization rise when they move to stronger, more concentrated energy sources. Second, that no country on planet Earth became powerful without mastering large scale energy to build their factories, electric grids, and heavy industry. You see, it is simple. Energy sits at the core of industry growth. Yet, Africa's development conversation often focuses on AID, aka aid. But no country industrialized on charity. They do so on ENERGY, energy. Century ago, Britain burned coal, America expanded through oil and electricity, China used massive coal consumption to fuel its rise. See the pattern. Energy came first, industry followed, power came after, not the other way around. So, right now, much of Africa, mainly sub Saharan Africa, except, of course, South Africa and Northern Africa, remains in early stage of building industry. So, the energy consumption is almost insignificant compared to other continents. To understand, one American uses as much energy as 30 Africans. That is the scale difference we are talking about. So the average African use only enough energy to power a few light bulbs and basic appliances. That is not enough for steel plants, not enough for large scale manufacturing. So, without sufficient energy, factories cannot scale, industries cannot expand, okay? Economies cannot become strong. If energy drive civilization and Africa is behind in energy scale, then the real question becomes who controls Africa's energy future? Daniel Yergin writes in his book, The Price, a book I highly recommend, that oil equals power. That's why countries that control oil have often had a lot of money and power. I'll let you guess which ones. So, applying Jurgen's framework, Africa suffers from deficits in both energy security and energy sovereignty. Energy security means that energy is reliable, affordable. And energy sovereignty goes further. It means your energy system is designed to serve domestic development first, not external markets. Yet, Africa exports energy, but domestic grids remain fragile. It is energy rich, but energy insecure. So, when a continent rich in resources cannot power his own development, the problem is not resources, it is also institutions. You see, Africa operates inside an institutional trap. Paul Collier, in The Bottom Billion, another book that I highly recommend, talks about countries falling into traps like bad governance and resource traps. So these traps make it hard for countries in sub-Saharan Africa to grow, even if they have natural resources. Furthermore, Achimoglu and Robertson's in Why Nations Fail made extensive research that explains that when institutions are weak or unfair, development slows down or just stops. In simple terms, when a country has weak systems, unstable rules, and poor management, it can get stuck and the problems feed into each other. Bad policy weaken the economy. A weak economy makes it harder to improve the system. And unfortunately, this is where most of sub-Saharan African countries stand. And the cycle continues. That is what we mean by an institutional trap. As for the energy sector, in most sub Saharan Africa, it has been observed that internally, the energy sector is simply not reliable because rules change too often. Tariffs are frozen for political reasons. Utility companies lose money all the time. Maintenance is delayed. Grids weaken. And of course, blackouts follow. Externally, most infrastructure in Africa was built to extract minerals, not industrialize the continent. So many energy projects are financed externally under foreign legal systems and repaid in foreign currency. So the hand that gives often influences control. It's simple as that. So this is not just corruption, it is a structure interaction issues. Africa has resources, it has wealth, but without system power. Okay, so it is like owning fuel Africa has, but not controlling the switch. Okay, so the lack of large scale electricity is not an accident, it is the outcome of an old system. So, what is the true scale of Africa's energy problem according to data from? It's important to have the scope of the depth of the energy crisis in Africa. So, first, most power companies in Africa only collect 60% of the real cost of electricity. That means they don't earn enough money to fix and improve the system. About 15 to 20% of electricity is lost when it travels through power lines before reaching homes and businesses. Power company lose about 1% to 3% of the country income GDP every year. That's millions of dollars because the system is weak. Sub Saharan Africa has about 80 to 100 gigawatts of electricity for more than 1 billion people. That is too small. So, that is less than 100 watts per capacity per person compared to 3,000 watts per capacity per person for the United States, 2,000 for the Europeans, and 1,000 per capacity per person for China, for instance. So, in many African countries, businesses experiences, can you imagine 50 to 100 days without electricity each year? So, because of this business's loss, about 5 to 10% of their money every year they lose. Okay. So, another point is that around 40% to 60% of businesses must use diesel generators instead of the national electricity grid. That is huge. And diesel fuel for generators costs 2 to 5 times more than normal grid electricity. So, this is not about sunlight, it is about systems that are very weak in sub Saharan Africa. To cope with these energy problems, can Africa rely on renewables? Indeed, Africa has abundant renewable resources. Solar is cheaper, wind is cheaper. But let's not forget that renewables, as highlighted by the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, it requires strong grids, backup generation, storage, financially healthy utilities, things that are almost scarce in Africa. Also, mind that renewables do not industrialize economies on their own. Every industrial nation built dense energy first, then diversified. Yes, people will say China invests heavily in solar at this moment, but still, it consumes massive coal at the same time. So the issue is not renewable versus fossil fuels. It is the sequencing, okay? This is not about choosing fossil fuels over renewables. That's not the question. It is about Africa building a strong, reliable energy system first. So, how Africa sequences its own path. That's the most important. Today, we can ask the question also, can a fragile system experienced by many African countries leap into intermittent energy without building first industrial baseload? I'll let you guess. Can Africa fix its energy problem by working together? So, in theory, yes. Africa created actually regional power pools who are connected um, in their electricity system, and these electricity systems help countries to share power. They are mainly located in West Africa, Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, and in the north of Africa. But in reality, countries do not share much electricity. In many regions, only less than 10% of electricity cross borders. So instead of having one strong continental grid, most countries still run small separate systems. Example, Nigeria and Benin in West Africa. Nigeria sends electricity to Benin, but Nigeria often has grid failures and power shortages. Okay, so when Nigeria's grid collapses, Benin immediately lose electricity too. Weak connections can spread problems instead of solving them. The countries are connected in Africa, but the system is fragile. So why is this integration weak? To share electricity properly, countries need a lot of money, large investment, strong transmission lines, stable power companies, clear rules, political trust. Unfortunately, in many sub-Saharan parts of Africa, these conditions are still incomplete. As a result, electrical systems cost more and problems spread quickly. Countries remain vulnerable. Fragmentation is very expensive. So, connecting without strong institutions creates weak dependence instead of stability. I wouldn't pass the opportunity to highlight how two African giants took their destiny in their own hands. regarding energy. I know I may shock some people, or people may be against this idea, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me, you can just comment. But let's talk about Ethiopia and Nigeria. As you know, Ethiopia built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam recently. So it has the capacity to produce 6,000 megawatts of hydropower. That electricity, note, goes directly into the national grid. It strengthens the electricity system in itself. In the long run, this increases energy availability for all and support industry at scale. This is grid building energy. On the other hand, Nigeria built the Dangote refinery. And let me be clear, this is a major industrial achievement in African history. But refining fuel does not stabilize the electricity grid. A refinery makes fuel, a dam makes electricity. They are not the same chain. Fuel helps cars move, fuel reduces imports, fuel can generate revenue, but electricity flowing through a strong grid is what powers factories, machines, and large scale industry. To sum up, oil can generate revenue, okay? Hydropower generates electricity. You see, revenue only becomes a powerful industry if the institutions of that country convert that money into infrastructure to fix the grid. Power plants, transmission lines, and like I say, grid expansion. That is the fundamental difference. Like I say, I may shock some people when I say this, but building electricity capacity directly strengthens industry faster than refining fuel alone. Remember, every sovereignty is not just owning oil. Energy sovereignty is having a strong electricity system you control, a system that works, a grid that is stable, and power that supports your own development first. That is the difference. The data is clear. Africa is not poor because it lacks sun, not because it lacks oil, not because it lacks minerals. It is constrained because the system is weak. No slogan, green or otherwise, can replace strong industrial power. Every industrial nation builds strength first, then diversify. Africa must build strong, large scale, reliable systems first, using whatever dense energy it controls, and then diversify from a position of strength. I repeat again, it's important for Africans to understand that energy sovereignty is not an ideology, it is control. Control over your baseload, control over your transmission, control over integration, and control over sequencing. Until Africa controls its energy system, it will continue to sit on resources while importing stability. History shows nations that fail to control their energy system do not control their future. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment for this time, and stay tuned for our next episode.